Welcome back and thanks for staying with us. Now, he's been described as a villain and a saint, the man who brought democracy to Zimbabwe and defended Africa's position to the world. He's also been blamed for bringing untold suffering to the people of Zimbabwe and forcing millions of them out onto the world. This is the mixed legacy of the late former Zimbabwean president, Robert Mugabe. Now, Saviour Kasukuwere first rose in the ranks in the ruling ZANU-PF as a youth leader. Subsequently, he became the Minister of Local Government, Youth and Environment. And at the time of the attempted coup in Zimbabwe in 2017, he was ZANU-PF National Commissar and mentioned in an interview with the departed president as one of the senior party officials who were hounded and who sought refuge at one of his residences. Mr. Kasukuwere joins us now in the studio. Thank you so much for making the time to join us this morning. You've just returned from where the former president passed away. What can you tell us about that day, the hours leading up to his passing, and condolences, by the way?
Thank you very much. Well, I think it's been very painful. President Mugabe is one man who said, I was born here, I'll die here, and I'll be buried here. He would have loved to die in his country. He would love to be in Zimbabwe. But as it were, he has died in Singapore. It's been a very painful thing. He left this morning for Zimbabwe. He was flown back home. This is not an easy occasion. For those who know what he stood for him to have seen his last breath outside the country speaks a lot about the concerns that the people have and about also how he felt.
That falls into the global conversation, a long-standing conversation on the African continent about African leaders who have previously been in a position to improve the health facilities of their countries, but when it comes to them needing health or medical attention, they then go to other countries. Do you think this will speak to his legacy?
Well, he was a very strong 95-year-old man. Very few people live that long. So to say he was exactly, yeah. 95, he has had good innings, to be honest. But the circumstances which find him in Singapore for this extended period of time is really what concerns me.
Tell us about those circumstances.
Well, I think to an extent that the harassment, the unfair behavior of the comrades who have now taken over the country, we must put it clearly to them. You can't continue doing these things. Effectively, Mugabe died in exile.
Tell us more.
I'm saying we should be able to work much better. He was the founding father of our country. Come the day of the coup, President Mugabe accepted that, well, if this is what the nation wants, for me to stand up. He did resign, but there were lots of statements which were very unfortunate that were made about him thereafter. Everybody who just thought he had to say something, they would say this man was a sellout. He's the one who brought sanctions on the country. He did it. Very unguarded statements by senior members of the party, which they've known very well that this can't be accepted. We've got to give honor where it is due. President Mugabe stood for the people of Zimbabwe, stood for the people of Africa. He sacrificed himself. As he is dead today, he's still on the sanctions. He is the only one and his wife who still remain on the European list of sanctions, as well as the US sanctions. Now, to then caricature such a man, just because you want power, is unacceptable. I think the time has come for us to be very blunt with each other and say, no, comrades, we are going wrong. We've gone astray. Let us be guided. Let's respect each other. Let's respect the founders of our nation. President Mugabe did not deserve to be treated in the manner that he did. In fact, he was 2 weeks away from stepping down as president of Zimbabwe. A lot has been said about this man, which is not true. People today want to blame Mugabe for the failures of the economy. They say, there was corruption. There is no new dispensation which does not build from what we were all doing together. People must own up, and we must fix Zimbabwe's challenges together, not to try and cast aspersions and blame on one person.
So as a person who's been there through all these motions for quite a long time, where did it all go wrong?
Well, I think it's a question of ambition and misplaced ambition. The way people take over power is always a major source of how they behave thereafter. You don't want to blame and always continue to blame a system that we build together. By the way, I'm young. I only joined the movement along the way. Okay? I became a minister along the way. But I'll take collective responsibility. Where we erred, where we made Zimbabweans not happy, we must accept together. Fixing the country requires all of us to, again, to say, how do we attend to the challenge that faces our country? Those in the diaspora, with thousands of our men and women who are making a living, in fact, way, way below their capacities. You have people in South Africa, doctors, you have people in countries, Mozambique and so forth. We as Zimbabweans, if anything, the death of President Mugabe must motivate us to come together and face this challenge square and look at it in the eye and say, how do we fix our country? We can't continue to hide under some fun excuses and give ourselves funny names of we're now open for business, all that nonsense. We must address this issue. What is the core concern? Our people are suffering.
We're told there is wrangling about his final resting place. What has been decided finally?
Well, I'm sure that's not my area. That's for the family and the government. I don't want to go into an area that is not. I wish they respect, if he has any views that he said, those should be respected. And I'm sure the discussions will be held between the family and the government of Zimbabwe.
I totally understand that point of view, but you have previously been said to be a very close ally to him. If you were asked for an opinion, what would be the best resting place for the former president? Well,
whatever he chose. He is not one character who will depart this world without a clear outline or guideline to say, this is what I want. I know him very well. President Mugabe was thorough. In fact, he would know that where I am now, how I'm feeling, I'm no longer feeling well, and these are the steps that must be taken. And I'm sure he would have considered everything and say, if you follow the following ways, 1, 2, 3, I'll be happy. And I would be one inclined to say, if he said a thing, let's respect whatever he said. I have not been privy to what the family discussed or the president discussed or what the government is saying. I only say, Madala, Famba Zwakanaka, but whatever he said, let's respect that position.
So there is mixed reaction about how to remember President Robert Mugabe. What, for you, you touched on it a bit at the beginning of the conversation, is the best descriptor of his legacy?
He's a great man. President Mugabe is a man who changed the lives of our people. From the moment he left Ghana, after his stint in Ghana as a teacher, he sacrificed himself. He was in prison for 11 years. He lost even his son, Namo Zenyika, was in prison. 11 years in prison is not a joke. He's an educated man, highly educated man, who could have chosen an easier path and worked in one of the universities in the world. He could have become a vice chancellor in New York, wherever he would have chose. But he decided to sacrifice himself along other luminaries of our struggle. He was in there. After his stint in prison, the party asked him to go and lead the struggle outside the country. And he actually chose and decided to follow the aspirations and directions of the people. He went to Mozambique, and you could tell from the moment he joined and became part of the movement in Mozambique, the direction it took. Names were now being given each year, had its motivational name placed on it, Gorema Simbaevano and so forth, the people's power. And by 1980, we all knew, we're youngsters, but we could sense that there was direction. For 40 years, President Mugabe gave direction. In other words, from 77, when he took over the guerrilla movement, to when he passed on, he was the torchbearer in our country. Admitted, there could be other areas of that could concern many people in our society. But you also want to look at the major things that he did.
Yeah.
Education. Zimbabweans, whether you like it or not, undoubtedly,
yeah,
they lead. Number 2, the land reform was not a picnic. When you are trying to take land from those with to give to your people, there will always be attendant consequences. But he never shied away, because these were the resolute aspirations that gave rise to the struggle for independence. When people went to fight for independence, they were very clear. One of the major grievances was our land. And you know how the attachment our people have to their land, because it is the basis of production.
All over Africa.
Exactly.
So how should the media is always blamed for misrepresenting certain situations. How should the media be portraying the fact that he also ruled over a time in Zimbabwe where there was massive job losses? no economic growth, masses and masses of Zimbabweans having to leave the country to go and find better living conditions elsewhere, including South Africa?
Look, let me put it to you, Desiree, that the land reform program was in earnest carried out in Zimbabwe. And the Western world would not easily pass it off. Sanctions were imposed on our country. In spite of that, there was years in between where we enjoyed lots of economic growth. And I think we also need to attend...
It used to be called Africa's economic basket.
But even the land reform ushered in a new landed gentry who are doing well, were doing well in terms of tobacco production. From about 120 million kgs, today we're boasting about 258 million kgs of tobacco. And you work those numbers and say, how much has it translated in terms of the empowerment and improvement of the life and circumstances of the majority? It's been a huge success. Scones
a lot of Zimbabweans would dispute that, though.
No. Those on the land will accept what I'm saying. Undoubtedly, there have also been challenges that have come as a result of how do you finance agriculture sustainably. You have droughts. How do we implement the irrigation schemes? How do you ensure that the farmers who have land on that piece of land and they can develop that land? What is their title? How do we protect their rights? And so that at least we bring in investment. And of course, the nature and the manner in which we carried out the land reform would obviously cause concerns around the world. But one does not also want to ask, what was the agreement at Lancaster? The transfer of land had been negotiated. And there are countries which had signed off this transaction to say, yes, we'll provide funding. Come Claire Short, she writes to Minister Kangai and says, I am of Irish extraction.
Yeah.
I have no need.
Why did the people of Zimbabwe have to suffer as a result of these misunderstandings?
Well, but that is how the world operates. The success of the land reform program in Zimbabwe means a lot more to the white community. And that is what you must start thinking. What are the ramifications?
Is it true that the land program is being reversed now?
I hope it's not done. I hope they don't do that. Mm-hmm. You get maybe fears here and there of excitement, of people trying to play around with the land and say, no, I need to remove this one, I want to place this one here, which I think is, again, the source of major disinvestment in the country. Because for as long as a minister individually just thinks, I don't like this guy, I must move him from there to there, I don't like that guy, I must bring in my cousin, then we have a disaster. I think we must now start thinking of how do we bring about title for us to be able to get investment, banks to come back to lend the farmers. Mm-hmm. Yes, we have all these programs, command agriculture, but what you need is a much more sustainable program that is based on economic rationale. Give title to the farmers, make sure that if they are going to sell the land, are they not reversing the gains of the land reform program, but let people be able to invest knowing full well that this is where I am. Then we can invest in and develop our country.
Why were you in Singapore? What's your relationship to the family?
I was Mugabe's minister. I've been his youth leader. He was our leader for a long time. It was only befitting for me to go and pay my respects to President Mugabe and say farewell.
What is the interaction between the former First Lady, Ms. Grace Mugabe, and the current government, and is she on that flight that's bringing his body home?
Yeah, well, I think they have been interacting. Yes, she's on that flight, which is bringing the former president back home.
What do you think not only the Zimbabwean, but the general African public, who some of them absolutely adored the former president, what can they expect for this weekend?
Well, first of all, let me salute governments like Kenya and others who have actually gone out of their way to mourn and pay their respects to President Mugabe. I think this is something that we really, really admire, and thank President Kenyatta and other leaders who have followed suit. Africa has lost a giant. He did not speak for himself. President Mugabe spoke for the majority. President Mugabe spoke for Africa. Just to draw you back a bit, if President Mugabe had wanted to do deals around the land reform program, he could have got the best farms in each and every province in the country and done nothing. But he chose to say, can we all benefit as Zimbabweans? What comes out of that is secondary. But he was a leader who said, this is the way we must go. The party has directed me to go in this direction. He will do that. He was not selfish. Actually, his children and his immediate family are not rich at all. I
don't think that that goes along with the reports we've been hearing, the kind of properties we've been shown around the world where they live. That doesn't tie into...
This is the beauty about lying. It only runs short distances. The truth runs long distances. In good time, we shall evaluate. Those who say these are criminals around Mugabe, we also will be asking, what did they steal? From who? Times will tell. I mean, the beauty about life, Desiree, is that it will come to a time when the reality will come up and say, I'm here.
And those people you're talking about include in them yourself. When the coup attempt took place in 2017, you were part of the supposed G40 group that went with Mr Mugabe and wanted apparently to topple government, to create a new government. And subsequently, you've lost your ministership. You have been suspended from the party. Are you a pure business person now? What's your involvement in politics and what's your role going forward?
When you're in the party, you don't plan against the leader. I was National Political Commissar. The party has mandated me a certain assignment, duty, to protect the integrity of the party. I could see that there were comrades who have now become restless. They wanted power. I would have chosen the easiest route, to join them and undermine President Mugabe. But I chose to suffer alongside the president. I knew that the president was going to be toppled one day or the other. But from a principle point of view, never you sacrifice your principles on the altar of expediency. I was honest.
Did this G40 group exist?
What is G40? It's in the fragmentation of people. This, you see, when people start giving names to other people, young people, and I must say this, within the party and many cadres, supported what President Mugabe stood for. President Mugabe was about the empowerment of our people. President Mugabe was about fairness and equity, unity, peace, and development. He's a man we all viewed, and we also were following the leadership who were saying, he's our supreme commander. They will say, he's our supreme commander. The commander of the Defense Forces, then General Chiwenga, said, this kind of leader can never be removed. Let him follow the footsteps of his colleagues. Joshua Nkomo died in office. Vice President Zenda died in office. If that is our mistake, that we were following the teachings of our leadership, then we're sorry.
President Mnangagwa's name was mentioned as a possible successor in a previous coup attempt around 2007. Did it surprise you that he came out as the successor this time around?
No. No. And that's why we are where we are. And that's why I'm saying we need an honest conversation with President Mnangagwa at some point.
What is the future of Zimbabwe? There are fears that the economy is deteriorating. Just the holes in the bucket are just unpluggable now. It's getting really bad. What is your sense, and are you involved in any conversations about reviving the economy of Zimbabwe?
Zimbabwe's economy is a cause for concern for all of us as citizens. In other words, those who get seriously affected are the people at the bottom of the pyramid. And we must have a sense as leaders to say, is this the correct direction? What our country needs right now is to come together. We must unite in the interest of our people. Let's do away with the vengeance. Let's do away with trying to fix others. Let's do away with trying to destroy characters or individuals. Let's concentrate on uplifting the majority of our people. We have youngsters who want a job. We need investors to come into Zimbabwe. They need a stable environment. We need to get our farms to work. Again, we require stability. Let us lower the volume and concentrate more on growth and progress. We are right now, they have become the authors of our own misery. We are a laughingstock. What does it mean to me as a leader when I see my fellow countrymen being killed around
But
the
as
world.
an individual yourself, you're undergoing a court process where you've been accused of corruption for handing over land to Ms. Grace Mugabe. How far is that? Your
acquitted.
passport was taken. Have you got your passport back?
I got my passport,
Are you
yeah.
going to be at the funeral at the weekend?
The passport I have, I was also acquitted.
Are you going to be at the funeral at the weekend?
That's now security issues. Can you allow yourself, can you afford just to go in there? Otherwise, you get a new case being thrown. I was accused of border jumping, and I was acquitted. I went back because I believed we must build our country in spite of the challenges.
Yeah.
I went back in May last year. I said, no, let bygones, the president said, let bygones be bygones. The foreign minister said, those who are outside the country and have nothing to worry about, if they have cases, they'll be dealt with speedily in the courts and fairly. I said, fine, let me go. I went, I attended the court, I was acquitted. But the magistrate was sacked after that. I came back, I started doing my business, I have regional interests around the region. I went back again, the 23rd of September. I was arrested on the 24th. A new set of charges had been prepared for me. I asked him, but why didn't you include them in the first place? That you said were the criminals around Mugabe. Why didn't you just have a dossier and say, these criminals did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 50 things. Then you deal with me once and for all.
What role do you want to play in a future Zimbabwe?
I'm a Zimbabwean. I'm a player in Zimbabwean politics. No doubt about it.
Do you want to go back to ZANU-PF?
I'm a player in Zimbabwean politics. ZANU-PF, I was fired in ZANU-PF. I was ZANU, born in ZANU, and I still carry my Mugabe card, ZANU of Mugabe. I still have it because I believed in what it stood for. We believed in what ZANU-PF stood for. ZANU-PF needs reform.
Okay,
ZANU-PF
we're
needs to move forward.
time-tied. We have to go back to the State Capture Commission in Parktown right now. But just quickly, what are your feelings about the current xenophobic narrative that's taking place in South Africa against people who don't come from, who are not South African born?
We are all Africans. You are my sister. If you are crossing Zimbabwe, I can't even tell whether it's South African or Zimbabwean. Do we have to do this to each other?
Do you agree, though, that sometimes it can be a burden on South African resources?
Agreed. Isn't it time also South Africa fairly sat down with the region and said, guys, let's deal with internal challenges in these countries. What are the issues? We can't put our heads in the sand like ostriches. If there are challenges in Zimbabwe, let's address them. President Ramaphosa must say, Comrade Mnangagwa, what's going on in your country?
Your thoughts about President Mnangagwa?
What do you want me to say?
Not much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Saviour Kasukuwere, a former minister in Zimbabwe and a high-ranking official within ZANU-PF. That's, of course, until he was expelled. Thank you so much again for making the time.